The raven bearing the royal seal arrived in Winterfell, and with it came the weight of a kingdom. Ned Stark stood in the Godswood, reading Robert Baratheon's letter once again. It was not the first time a king had asked a Stark to ride south. But unlike his ancestors, Ned was not driven by ambition, only duty. And duty, this time, demanded he say no. Catelyn was relieved. The North needed Ned, especially with tensions rising along the wall and the mystery of Jon Arryn's death casting shadows too deep to ignore. Maester Luwin sent a reply that very night. Lord Eddard Stark respectfully declined the position of Hand of the King. When Robert arrived in Winterfell, days later, he was not pleased. The king, accompanied by his queen and her Lannister retinue, did not take the rejection lightly. He pushed, pleaded, and demanded. Ned remained firm. "The North has its own battles to fight," he said, "and I will not abandon my people to play politics in the South." Robert stormed, drinking deep into the night. Cersei's disdain grew as her plan began to unravel. She had counted on Ned's honor to trap him, just as Jon Arryn had been ensnared. Tyrion Lannister, always the observer, found the change fascinating. Perhaps, he mused to Jon Snow one evening, your father is wiser than he appears. The South eats its own. Better a wolf in the snow than prey in a lion's den. With no hand, Robert had no choice but to turn to another. Stannis Baratheon refused to return from Dragonstone. Renly lacked the experience and seriousness that left Seer Barristan semi-noble and loyal, but not a politician. The realm began to rot from within as whispers of treason and coin filled the halls of the Red Keep. Back in Winterfell, strange things stirred. Benjen Stark returned from the Wall with troubling news. Rangers were vanishing, and something ancient was waking in the far north. Ned, not distracted by the politics of King's Landing, focused on bolstering the Night's Watch and strengthening alliances in the north. Jon Snow, still determined to take the Black, was given more than a farewell. He was armed with fresh steel, advice, and a promise from Ned. Should darkness come, send word. The North will answer. Bran's fall still happened. The climb, the fall, the broken body. But there was no Lannister panic, no assassination attempt. Without the threat of Ned investigating in King's Landing, Cersei felt no need to silence. The boy Jaime still pushed, but the consequences remained in the north. And Catelyn, suspicious but not panicked, nursed her son while Ned investigated quietly. Without Ned's presence in the south, the small council grew more corrupt. Pettier Baelish grew bolder, manipulating Robert's finances and sowing discord. Varys observed, adjusting his plans. With no Stark in court, their webs began to tangle in different directions. Sansa remained in Winterfell, her southern dream delayed. Arya trained with Needle in quiet corners. Robb began to bear the weight of lordship on his shoulders. Then news came from across the sea. Viserys Targaryen had married his sister to a Dothraki Khal. Robert, furious, demanded Daenerys' death. Without Ned to protest, Seer Barristan hesitated but was overruled by a majority of the council. The assassin was sent. In the north, the Night's Watch sent ravens with troubling reports. Benjen had vanished. Dead men walked. Ned summoned his bannermen not for war, but for vigilance. He reached out to Houses Mormont, Karstark, and Umber. The north was being prepared. Samwell Tarly's raven carried a warning, and this time, it was not ignored when the assassin failed to kill Daenerys. Khal Drogo vowed vengeance. The war drums of the Dothraki began to thunder. The Game of Thrones continued, but the North stood apart for now. the winds of change blew harder across Westeros as summer waned, and though Ned Stark remained in the north, the consequences of his choice rippled far and wide. In King's Landing, the absence of his quiet honor allowed shadows to grow darker. Pettier Baelish no longer needed to dance so carefully around the Stark Lord. With Seer Barristan Selmy named Hand of the King respected but politically naive, manipulated finances, lords, and loyalties without check. Gold flowed where whispers went. The iron bank of Braavos grew uneasy, but in the capital no one listened, not even the king. Robert Baratheon, denied the comfort of his old friend, grew more bitter. His days were spent hunting and drinking, his nights with whores and wine. Cersei pulled tighter the strings of her own power, whispering in her son Joffrey's ear, feeding his cruelty like a lioness grooming her cub for the kill. Without Ned's cautious hand, Joffrey's arrogance festered earlier. The boy prince began demanding more from the Kingsguard and humiliating servants at court. Sansa, still safe in Winterfell, was spared the heartache and terror of his affections. Meanwhile, in Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon saw opportunity. Jon Arryn was dead. Ned Stark remained in the north. The court was leaderless, drowning in coin and conspiracy. Seer Davos warned caution, but Melisandre, her red eyes glowing with prophecy, urged action. "The night is dark and full of terrors," she said, "and only you, Azor Ahai, can save the realm." Stannis, ever brooding, began preparing. Letters were drafted, ravens flew, seeds of civil war were sown. In the east, Daenerys Targaryen's fate took a similar yet darker path. The assassin's poisoned wine never reached her lips thanks to Seer Jorah Mormont, who intercepted the plot. But Drogo's wrath could not be restrained. The Dothraki began to move not to Westeros yet, but eastward, conquering lands to build. Strength, Viserys, impatient, still met his golden end. But Daenerys, pregnant and more confident, began to understand power. And while the world churned, the North stood watch. Robb Stark, now 15, rode beside his father to hold courts and visit bannermen. The boy grew into a man more quickly than peace would normally allow. With Benjen still missing beyond the wall, and word of White Walkers spreading in whispers from returning rangers, the wall became a subject of grave concern. Maester Aemon's letters no longer spoke of wildlings, but of death itself. Jon Snow, now a brother of the Night's Watch, saw it firsthand. He wrote to Ned of corpses, rising and cold winds whispering ancient names. Ned sent supplies, food, blacksmiths, and even men. He summoned lords to Winterfell, not to fight a southern war, but to prepare for the one most ignored, the one in the dark. Seer Roderick Castle was dispatched to inspect Hulfists. Lady Mage Mormont pledged her strength. Even the Greyjoys contacted. Reluctantly, offered to send scouts near Eastwatch, but Theon Greyjoy, still a ward, was not permitted to return. Ned kept him close. "I promised your father peace," he reminded him, "and peace is kept with honor." Catelyn Stark, though relieved her husband was not in the south, remained wary. She began compiling letters of her own tracking connections, suspicious deaths, and the Lannisters' expanding influence. She had not forgotten the look in Cersei's eyes, nor the way Jaime Lannister had avoided discussing Bran's fall. Though no assassin came for the boy, the truth was still a dagger waiting to strike, and in the Riverlands, the tension of the realm was beginning to show. Gregor Clegane, unbridled by laws or eyes, raided villages in the name of requisition. Seer Edmure Tully sent complaints, But King's Landing offered no justice. Without Ned Stark's southern presence, the lords who valued honor felt adrift. The Knights of the Vale, stirred by Lysa Arryn's paranoia, began to close their gates tighter. The Stormlands and the Reach prepared quietly, their own ambitions swelling beneath smiles. In a tavern outside Harrenhal, a black-haired bastard named Gendry was questioned by a cloaked stranger with a mocking voice. "You have your mother's eyes," the man said, "but not her sense. Best you run far, boy, far and fast." Gendry did not understand, but fate had taken notice of him. The storm was gathering. Ned Stark may have stayed in the north, but his choice had not protected the realm from the game, it had only changed the board. Summer snow fell early in the north, an omen the old men muttered about, their voices low around hearths in Winterfell. Ned Stark listened. He had always listened. And now, with more time and fewer distractions, his ears were turned to the old tales, to Mester Lewin's archives, to the children of the forest and the long night. What once seemed like myth now lingered too close for comfort. The ravens from the walls spoke of corpses with blue eyes, of direwolves howling at unseen foes, of fire no longer holding the dark at bay. Samwell Tarly's words, humble but urgent, reached Winterfell with the force of prophecy. We need help. We need the North. Jon Snow, already seeing the price of loyalty at Castle Black, was changing the wall-hardened boys into men, but what he saw beyond it turned him into something else, watchful, calculating, cautious. He began to speak less and observe more, listening not only to his brothers but to Ghost, whose instincts never failed him. When a ranger returned half dead, whispering, "The dead don't sleep," Jon convinced Jorah Mormont to send a ranging force toward the Frostfangs. Jon volunteered to go. Back at Winterfell, Ned expanded his watch. He sent men to Deepwood Motte, to Last Hearth, to the Shadow Tower. House Mormont pledged more than words. They sent Lyanna, Mormont's older cousins, seasoned women warriors with bare sigils and iron resolve. Small folk were trained in arms. The ancient crypts of Winterfell were unsealed for the first time in generations, and old steel was reforged. But danger wasn't just lurking in the north. In King's Landing, the rot at the core of the court grew. With Seer Barristan overwhelmed by political maneuvering, Cersei moved her pawns more freely. The Goldcloaks were placed under Janos Slynt's direct command. Joffrey, emboldened by his mother and the lack of restraint, began punishing nobles who questioned him. Whispers of tyranny spread. The small folk, overtaxed and starved, grew restless. Riots sparked near Flea Bottom, and when bread was denied, blood followed. Littlefinger offered solutions, bribes and assassinations. Varys watched and planned. But without Ned Stark's honor or investigation, the truth of Jon Arryn's death remained buried, and so too did the secret of Joffrey's parentage. Yet secrets are like seeds. They sprout in darkness. In the Vale, Lysa Arryn's paranoia reached a fever pitch. She barred the airy gates and refused even her bannerman audience. Her son, Robin, sickly and unruly, was named Lord of the Vale far too early. Petyr Baelish, seeing opportunity, turned his eyes eastward. He wrote often to Lysa now, his words laced with longing and manipulation. He had not yet made his move, but the board was shifting. Meanwhile, Stannis Baratheon's letters reached noble houses across Westeros. In them, he named Joffrey a bastard born of incest and declared himself the rightful king. Many lords scoffed. Some burned the letters. but a few noble houses with long memories and deeper loyalties. The Stormlands began to stir. Renly Baratheon, seeing his brother's boldness, began forming his own alliance, playing the game with charm and promises of peace. But war was coming, not from one side but from all. Far across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen gave birth. Beneath the red comet's light, the child was weak, born too early. Khal Drogo, weakened from a festering wound, never recovered. With his death, the Khalasar splintered. Alone, grieving, and burning with vengeance, Daenerys emerged from Drogo's pyre with her dragons. But she was not met with awe. She was hunted. Her journey to power would be longer and darker without the support she might have gained from a distracted Westeros. She would need to survive in the shadows. In Riverrun, Catelyn Stark continued gathering threads. Her investigation into Jon Arryn's death brought her to a strange Ali Howland Reed, who arrived from the Neck with news and memory. He told Catelyn what few knew, that secrets tied to the Targaryens still lived, not just in exile, but perhaps even closer. Whispers of Rhaegar and a woman at the Tower of Joy chilled her more than she expected. She did not yet know what it meant, but she kept the information close. And through it all, the North remained vigilant. Ned Stark, though far from the capital, was building something older and more necessary than politics unity. With no war pulling him south, no dishonor dragging his name, he prepared for the real threat, the cold, the dead, and the long night to come. Snow fell heavier across the north, blanketing Winterfell in white silence. Fires roared in the great hall, but a deeper cold had settled in the bones of the realm. Ned Stark walked the battlements with Robb, his son, taller now, broadening with the weight of command. The boy asked questions, more often not of swordplay, but of justice, loyalty, and fear. Ned answered honestly, "A lord must be more than brave. He must be steady. Wars are won with courage, but peace is kept with judgment." Beyond the wall, Jon Snow's ranging reached the haunted forest. They found burned villages, torn bodies, and worse signs of rituals, circles of stones, corpses with missing eyes. The dead did not stay buried. The rangers were attacked one night by whites. Jon slew one with fire. The whispers of white walkers became screams in the dark. Ghosts returned to him with blood on his fur. Jon wrote another letter, this one short and urgent. "They are real. We need fire and men now." At Castle Black, Maester Aemon wept as he sealed the Raven. He had seen the last long night. He would not survive another dot in the Riverlands. House Tully came under pressure. The crown demanded more taxes. The Lannisters took advantage of the disorder in King's Landing and began harassing riverfolk under the guise of unpaid debts. Sir Gregor Clegane torched villagers near the borders. Edmure Tully protested, but no justice came. Brynden Blackfish rode to Winterfell, seeking counsel and perhaps alliance. He warned that Tywin Lannister was moving men under false banners. War might not wait for southern politics to erupt. It would begin in the heart of Westeros, with Cat's quiet investigation bearing fruit and Brynden's warnings. Ned began preparing for more than just winter. He hosted a gathering of northern lords. Mormont, Karstark, Glover, Umber, and Reed sat at his table. What was meant to be a quiet discussion became a council of war. "The realm forgets the North," Ned said, "but the North remembers. We will not be caught unready." Meanwhile, Stannis' accusations finally reached ears that mattered. Lord John Connington in exile stirred. In Dorne, Prince Doran Martell received the letter with interest and suspicion. If Joffrey were a bastard, the whole line of succession crumbled. Doran did not act rashly, but his mind turned to his daughters. Future and the possibility of fire and blood returning to the realm in the Reach. Renly Baratheon announced his own claim to the throne. He gathered houses, Tyrell, Redwyne, and Hightower, under the banners of peace, prosperity, and protection. Loras Tyrell stood beside him, a living legend. But Renly had no birthright, only charm. The Tyrells chose him for ambition, not truth. Civil war brewed in the south, not through a single rebellion, but through 3 separate kings none crowned. All soon to be, in King's Landing, Joffrey was declared heir, and began ruling in Robert's frequent absences. His cruelty intensified. Seers, Barristan and Jaime argued behind closed doors. Cersei ruled more than her son, and she had begun spying on her own allies. Varys whispered to birds with clipped wings. Littlefinger watched chaos grow like a garden. When Robert was wounded by a boar during a drunken hunt, Cersei seized the moment. The king lingered on his deathbed. His last words were slurred and unclear. The succession passed without a will. Joffrey sat the throne, but this time Ned Stark was not there to challenge it. This time there was no letter revealing the truth. No arrest in the throne room. No blood spilled in the name of honor. Only silence and growing dread. Catelyn's letters had reached her sister Lysa, who refused any alliance. "The Aerie flies alone," she wrote. But Catelyn's latest letters were different. She no longer asked for answers, she sent them. She had pieced it together. Jaime and Cersei, twins. Bran's fall, Jon Arryn's death. She didn't know how to move against them yet, but she did not need to, not yet. The key was survival, and survival meant staying out of the south, far across. The sea Daenerys Targaryen nursed her dragons in secret. She was hunted now, her Khalasar gone, her allies few, but she had fire and prophecy. She began dreaming of Westeros, not as a place of memory, but of conquest. And in the north, Ned Stark received Jon's latest letter and knew the time for waiting was over. He looked beyond the walls of Winterfell and saw the coming night. He turned to Maester Luwin and said the words that would echo in every hall of the north: "Call the banners." The raven left Winterfell, bearing stark words sealed in wax. The north was rising, not for rebellion, but for survival. Ned Stark's command spread from the Dreadfort to Bear Island, calling bannermen not to fight the crown, but to defend the realm from the true threats stirring beyond the wall, at Castle Black. Jon Snow returned from his ranging with frostbitten hands and haunted eyes. Half his group had perished. He carried the burned remains of a reanimated ranger, now still. The Watch had no more doubts. The dead walked. Jeor Mormont called for all loyal men to prepare for a march beyond the wall. Jon, already proven, was named first ranger. Samwell, Tarly, once timid, worked day and night in the library, searching for lost knowledge, obsidian, fire, ancient rites. Word was sent to the citadel. Few believed them, but in the north, disbelief had no place anymore. South of the Neck, chaos blossomed. King Robert was dead. Whispers named it a boar, but those who listened closely heard another versioner: slower death, wind-dark and sweet, not beast-born. Cersei Lannister had moved quickly. Joffrey now wore the crown, sitting upon the Iron Throne like a dagger ready to slip. Ser Barristan Selmy, disillusioned, resigned his cloak and left the city. He vanished without a word, but the realm would not forget his departure. The King's Guard were reshuffled. Jaime remained, Sandor Clegane became more than a hound, and Joffrey ruled without mercy. With no Ned Stark to challenge the succession, Stannis made his move. His fleet, manned and bolstered by Melisandre's fiery vision, sailed from Dragonstone. His Banara burning heart was seen along the Stormland's coast. Lords swore to him quietly. He marched not toward King's Landing first, but toward the Reach's fringes. He aimed to cut supply lines before they grew strong. Melisandre whispered of shadow and king's blood. Davos watched her warily. Storms gathered. Renly crowned himself king in Highgarden, the Reach blooming with banners and silk. His army dwarfed Stannis's, but he lacked his brother's steel. Margaery Tyrell stood beside him, her hand in his, her eyes elsewhere. Petyr Baelish, ever opportunist, offered alliance and misinformation in equal measure, playing Renly and Cersei against one another. The game had never been bloodier. In the Westerlands, Tywin Lannister mobilized his forces, expecting Stark retaliation after Joffrey's rise. But no raven came. No war horns sounded. The North did not move against him. Instead, Ned sent only words to Riverrun. The time is not yet ripe. This confused the old lion. He did not know Ned was watching the wall, not the throne. Arya Stark, still safe in Winterfell, trained daily with Seer Roderick and the guards. She grew sharper with needle and sharper still with her tongue. Robb took more command, learning logistics, hosting bannermen, acting as his father's hand in the north. He no longer seemed like a boy. The direwolves grew restless, sensing what the humans could not. Winter's breath deepening, the howling night approaching. In the Riverlands, chaos erupted. Clegane raids escalated. Villages were razed. The Brotherhood without banners formed under Thros and Beric, striking back with guerrilla ferocity. The Riverlords cried out for protection, but with so many crowns and no king, the realm answered only with silence. Catelyn Stark, travelling quietly to the Twins, met with Lord Walder Frey. No wedding was proposed this time, only a pact, a promise of safe passage and supplies if needed. Frey demanded little. Without a war bride to claim, he saw no gain in insult. But Catelyn warned her husband all the same. That man is not to be trusted with honor or steel. Beyond the sea, Daenerys gathered strength in Qarth. Her dragons grew larger, unruly, hungering for more than scraps. The warlocks watched her carefully. She visited the House of the Undying and emerged with visions she could not yet understand. Thrones of swords, a wolf in the snow, a wall of ice. She vowed to take what was once stolen from her, but her eyes, once soft, had grown hard. She would not beg Westeros to accept her. She would burn it open if needed, as banners flew across the south. In red, gold, green, and black, the north stood still. Ned's messengers reached Dawn, the Vale, and the Iron Islands. He sought not swords, but truth. What each kingdom wanted, what they feared. His influence, quiet and steady, did not roar. It endured. For the first time in generations, the North was not reactive. It was deliberate. Then, from the east, came word from the citadel. Maester Luwin read aloud before the hearth. The darkness returns. The stars align with old patterns. Winter will not wait for peace. Send fire, send knowledge, send steel. And so, the fifth game began. But Ned Stark, the man who refused the South's call, was no longer playing. He was preparing for the war to end them all. When the sun rose over the wall, it revealed a world transformed. Snow now coated the frost fangs, deeper than it had in 100 years. The air burned with cold. Jon Snow stood among the survivors of the Night's Watch, his black cloak stiff with frost, his eyes darker than they had been. He had seen them, the White Walkers. He had seen one raise a corpse with a single glance. Even hardened rangers muttered prayers at night. Jon wrote once more to his father, this time with no formalities. If the wall falls, Westeros falls with it. Ned read the letter with a set jaw and called his banners, again not for war, but for a united defense. He sent Glover men to the wall. The Umbers rode hard through the snows. Ravens were dispatched to the south, warning of the true threat. Most of them were ignored. The south was too busy bleeding itself dry. In King's Landing, the first cracks began to show. Joffrey's reign became increasingly erratic. He executed a popular bard for a joke, had a lord whipped for speaking too loudly, and clashed often with the small council. Cersei tried to rein him in, but her control was slipping. Varys remained silent, eyes always watching. Littlefinger began laying the groundwork to abandon ship, and Tyrion, still in the capital but far from influence, began making plans of his own. Should the city fall to rebellion or dragons, Stannis reached the Stborn lands and took several key strongholds with little bloodshed. At night, fires blazed across the sea as Melisandre burned idols and statues of the Seven, invoking Arlorla's wrath. Lords that resisted were given a choice: kneel to the one true king or burn. Many knelt. Davos, growing uneasy, argued against the use of shadow magic, but Stannis had seen too much no-visions in the flames, promises of light in the darkness. He believed his path was chosen, and Melisandre told him that to win he would need the blood of kings. Renly, meanwhile, laughed off his brother's claims, his banners numbered in the tens of thousands. With the Tyrells behind him, he paraded through the Reach as if victory was already his. But he did not march north. He did not move at all. He waited, believing that his charm would bring the realm. To him, Margaery played queen already. Loras watched the shadows, and one night, in a quiet tent, before a battle that never happened, Renly Baratheon died screaming. His men, confused and leaderless, scattered. Some fled to Stannis, some remained, loyal to the Tyrells. Margaery wept publicly, but whispered quietly of vengeance. Seer Loras vowed blood. The realm saw another crown fall and another brother rise. In the Riverlands the flames of war took hold. Lannister forces sacked and burned Tully villages. Gregor Clegane led with no mercy. Riverrun was surrounded, though not yet under siege. Brynden Blackfish held strong. He had seen this coming. Catelyn rode south to her brother's aid with a host of Northmen under Roose Bolton. Robb, now fully Lord of Winterfell in all but title, remained behind guarding the North's future. Grey Wind never left his side, but something shifted in the Dreadfort. Roose Bolton began sending fewer ravens. His men were slow to follow commands. Whispers of flayed enemies and quiet executions reached Winterfell. Ned took note. Bolton, there's no man to be trusted, he told Robb. Watch him, and if he moves against US strike before he strikes twice. To the east, Daenerys made her move. With the help of Illyrio, Mapatus, and a few sellswords from Karth, she crossed the Red Waste and turned towards Slaver's Bay. Her dragons, once small as cats, now circled above like hawks. She took the city of Astapor with fire and cunning. The Unsullied followed her. She renamed herself Queen not of Ashes, but of Liberation. And she began to dream of Westeros again, not with longing, but with strategy. Her next target, Yunkai, the Dragon Queen was no longer begging. She was marching back in the Vale. Lysa Arryn's fear had curdled into madness. She refused all visitors. The Eyrie became a prison. Littlefinger saw his chance. He wrote to Catelyn, offering her safe passage through the Vale for a family visit, but Cat saw the game. She had learned too much from watching the South collapse. She did not trust the Mockingbird. Not yet. Then came the first sign of true doom. A raven from the Shadow Tower, its scroll nearly frozen to the bird's feet. They came in the night. They do not bleed. The wall holds, but not forever. Ned called a council. All lords who could travel to Winterfell arrived within They spoke not of the Iron Throne, not of Stannis or Lannister, but of death. We cannot march south when the North is dying, Ned said. Let them fight over chairs. We will fight for the realm itself. The great Northern Pact was formed. That night, not a kingdom, not yet, but a promise. If the wall fell, the North would not flee. It would burn itself to protect the realm. Outside, the snows continued to fall. And far, far beyond the wall, in lands only the dead walked now, something ancient stirred. The snow no longer melted in the north. The rivers of the Wolfswood froze over, and even the maesters began to admit it, a loud winter had come. In Winterfell, the great hall burned bright with fire, but its warmth reached no hearts. Lords sat, in fur-lined silence, listening as Maester Luwin read from the latest ravens. The wall held but barely. The Night's Watch had lost 3 more outposts. Jon Snow's name appeared often now. He led defense lines with grim precision. His letters increasingly clipped and urgent. Ned Stark read them in solitude, his mind already making choices others had not yet dreamed of. The war in the south was consuming itself. House Lannister had turned its wrath on Riverrun. Tywin Lannister moved with practiced cruelty, targeting river villages and supply lines. In retaliation, the Blackfish led guerrilla strikes with Northmen sent by Catelyn. The Riverlands bled, and yet no banner flew. To protect them, they were caught between lions and ghosts. Catelyn Stark rode between camps, her hands red with the ink of letters and strategy. She had grown sharp in absence of peace. Robb remained in Winterfell, a lord now fully formed. At his side, Theon. Greyjoy rode often, smiling easily, laughing loudly, but his eyes wandered east toward Pike. The ravens from Balon Greyjoy had stopped coming. Ned, watching the boy carefully, said nothing yet, but he sent ravens to White Harbour, asking House Manderley to patrol the eastern coast. Trust, but measure, he told Robb in King's Landing. King Joffrey executed Lord Stark, or so he claimed. He ordered the execution of Eddard Stark in absentia, branding him a traitor for failing to serve the king. The throne room fell silent as the decree was read. Tyrion, newly elevated as Master of Coin, spoke out against it mildly, carefully. But the realm noticed. The North's warden had not raised arms, had not rebelled, and yet was condemned. Doubts grew. Alliances shifted. Tyrion sent word to Ned, secretly through Varys. The boy grows mad. The queen grows cruel. I grow tired. Beware the wildfire brewing beneath the city. The letter arrived wrapped in riddles, but Ned understood it. Cersei had become more dangerous than ever, and her grip on Joffrey was slipping. The small council bled members, either from resignation or death. And deep in the dungeons of the Red Keep, whispers said Qyburn had returned, bringing with him unnatural knowledge and a promise of a different kind of night. Stannis, after his brother's death, marched on King's Landing. His fleet, vast and dark, approached Blackwater Bay under a red sky. But Tyrion Lannister, desperate and brilliant, unleashed wildfire. The bay exploded into green flame. Ships burned. Men screamed. Stannis was driven back, barely escaping with his life. Melisandre claimed it was a test of faith. Davos, wounded and grieving for his sons, began to doubt her. In the aftermath, the city did not celebrate, it mourned. Thousands of small folk had died. The stink of burned flesh choked the air. Joffrey declared himself the savior. Tyrion disappeared from court, wounded and scarred. Sansa, still in the north, had escaped that horror entirely. But she appeared in the dreams of Sandor Clegane, who left the city quietly, armor discarded, seeking peace he could not name. Far across the sea, Daenerys stormed Yunkai won. The slavers fell, and with them the illusion of eastern strength. Her army swelled with freedmen, her dragons now the size of wolves. She began testing their fire on more than goats. She spoke of crossing the narrow sea, but her advisers warned. Caution, Westeros is still at war, they said. Let them burn each other out. But Dany dreamed of snow and thrones, and a voice that whispered, "You are the storm. You are fire made flesh." Back in the Vale, Lysa Arryn's fall was quiet and sudden. Littlefinger arrived at the Eyrie under the pretense of peace. Within weeks, she was dead. Suicide, they said, and Petyr Baelish declared himself protector. Of Robin Arryn, the Vale, once isolated, opened its gates just slightly. Petyr began forging letters of alliance. One of them was addressed to Ned Stark. "Let the south burn," he wrote, "but the east will rise clean." Ned did not reply. Instead, he stood before the heart tree in Winterfell, surrounded by snow and silent. Ghosts. Robb stood beside him, the lords of the north behind them. Ned had no crown. He wore no golden cloak. But his words that day echoed through every hall and hill. The realm is dying. The kings play their game. But the north remembers. And we will not kneel to madness. We will stand, and we will fight, not for power, but for life itself. He unsheathed ice. Its cold steel gleamed in the dying light. We stand together, or we fall alone. That night, a raven flew from Winterfell to every loyal house. It bore no demands, no threat, no lie. It bore a single phrase, written in the hand of Ned Stark. The wall will fall. The wall fell. It did not fall to siege, nor sword, nor fire. It fell to silence. On a night when the auroras danced above the icy horizon, and the wind screamed louder than wolves, the dead came. They marched in unbroken lines, shadows with eyes of frozen blue, led by the one called Night King. Jon Snow stood atop the wall as the horn sounded 3 times. The gates held for a time. The watch held longer, but not long enough. When the wall cracked, its echoes were felt in winter. Ned Stark stood in the Godswood, eyes fixed north. His raven from Castle Black never came. Only silence. He knew then what the rest would only believe when death knocked at their door. The long night had begun again, not in prophecy, but in flesh, and this time the South would not be spared. He called his council. Robb, now a commander in truth, took charge of rallying bannermen. House Manderly sailed north to ferry refugees. The Umbers and Karstarks rode through deep snow, gathering all they could. Even the reclusive mountain clans of the north came down from their caves, grim and ready. There were no borders now, no feuds, only survival. Ned sent ravens again, this time with no ambiguity. to every great house, to every corner of Westeros. The wall is lost. The dead march. The north stands. Join us or die. Some answered. The Vale, under Petyr Baelish's direction, offered gold and grain but not swords. Dawn sent no reply, choosing silence and sun. The Reach, leaderless after Renly's fall and Tyrell disarray, fractured. House Tarly began preparing its own lands, refusing all orders from King's Landing. The Riverlands, broken and burned, sent what little they could. Blackwood archers, Frey deserters, and old men with war in their eyes. They followed Catelyn's banners, not the crowns. King's Landing ignored the warning. Cersei sat on the Iron Throne now, not beside it. Joffrey, poisoned by his own cruelty and enemies, was dead. She blamed Tyrion, who vanished in the night, smuggled away by Varys, with no dragons at her gate and no walkers in her streets. She dismissed the North's cry as desperation. Let the cold take them, she said, and the realm will be mine alone. But in the east, fire was coming. Daenerys Targaryen had sailed. Her ships cut through storm and salt with unsullied precision. Her dragons, now massive and primal, flew above them like ancient gods. She landed not at Dragonstone, but at White Harbor, answering Ned Stark's call not for alliance, but for purpose. The North welcomed her warily, but her fire was needed. She met Ned beneath the weirwood tree, where snow fell like ash. You know nothing of me, she said. I know what you've lost, he replied, and what you've become. She asked for no crown, only to fight. The pact was sealed. Jon Snow, once thought dead beyond the wall, returned. Half frozen, he rode through the gates of Winterfell with only a handful of survivors. He had killed one of them, a White Walker with dragonglass. His brothers had died to bring that truth back. He embraced his father not as a boy, but as a man burned by war. The reunion was brief. There was no time for memory now. The war came swiftly. The dead reached the gift within days. Villagers fell. The forests screamed. But they met resistance. The North had built walls, dug trenches, carved flaming runes into trees. Dragons rained fire from the skies. Gendry, now a smith in Winterfell, forged weapons from dragonglass retrieved from the eastern shores. Arya Stark, a shadow in the snow, took down whites with silent fury. Even Sandor Clegane came, drawn by prophecy and guilt. He fought beside the North, against an enemy no sword alone could kill. The Battle of Last Light was fought under a red sky, where fire met ice in a fury the world had never seen. Seer Davos led men with no banners. Theon Greyjoy, redeemed, died protecting Bran Stark in the crypts. The Night King came silent, cruel, inevitable. And there, in the heart of fire and shadow, Jon Snow faced him. No crown, no armor, only a sword of Valyrian steel and the blood of both wolf and dragon in his veins. The Night King fell, the army shattered, but Jon did not rise from that final blow. Silence returned to the world. In the aftermath, the realm woke from its nightmare. The South, spared but shamed, sent envoys. They found the North whole, scarred and standing. Winterfell's gates were open to allies, but not to kings. Daenerys left, her dragons wounded, her cause fulfilled. She flew east, seeking peace beyond ashes. Tyrion reappeared in Old Town, his hair turned silver from grief and frost. Sansa took her place as steward of Winterfell, guiding the rebuilding. Arya sailed west, beyond the maps, and Ned Stark, the man who had refused the throne, remained Lord of Winterfell. He had saved the realm not by playing the game, but by refusing it, and the North remembered.